Sometimes people have many questions about God.
I don't care what the Bible says. Like, I feel like it's a clown show, like sitting here trying to decipher what your little mythical book has to say about these very real political issues.
This can make some people stop believing in God. In the first episode, we talked about science and God. We found evidence that suggests there must be a higher intelligence. In episode 2, we examined a lot of religions based on historical and scientific evidence and sorted them out. Today, we will check deeper if the Old and New Testament agrees with science and history. To believe in it, it needs to be reliable. Scientific evidence number 1. Earth's shape in the Bible. Job 26:7 says, He stretches out the north over empty space, hangs up the earth on nothing. Some religious people believed the earth was carried by elephants on turtles. Columbus got inspired by the Bible to check if the earth was round. Guess what? Isaiah 40:22 mentions that the earth is like a circle. In Luke 17:34-36, Jesus also talked about how some people will be sleeping at night and others working during the day when He returns. This makes sense if you know how the earth moves around the sun and is round. Back then, people didn't know that, but Jesus and the Bible already had this knowledge. Scientific evidence number 2. The importance of blood. Back in the 18th century, some doctors didn't understand the importance of blood, and they tried a strange method called bloodletting to cure diseases. Sadly, it made people sicker and some even died. The importance of blood is in the Bible already written in Leviticus 17:11. For the life force of the flesh resides in the blood. Scientific evidence number 3. Dealing with waste. The Bible teaches us how to deal with waste properly. In Deuteronomy 23:12-13, it says, Designate a place outside the camp where you can go to relieve yourself. As part of your equipment, have something to dig with, and when you relieve yourself, dig a hole and cover up your excrement. If only people had listened earlier, many diseases like cholera could have been prevented. In 1846, a terrible epidemic in London caused 16,000 people to lose their lives because human waste was dumped on sidewalks, spreading the disease. Scientific evidence number 4. Washing hands under running water. The Bible tells us in Leviticus 15:13 that washing with running waters makes us clean. Long ago, during childbirth, many people got sick and died because doctors didn't wash their hands. They didn't know about tiny germs back then. But when they started washing their hands in still water before surgeries, fewer people died. Then something amazing happened. When doctors washed their hands with running water, the deaths dropped by a huge 98%. Scientific facts number 5. Shipbuilding instruction. In the Bible, it tells us how to build an ark. It should be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Many years later, in 1844, a person named Islamabad K. Brunel built a ship with the same dimensions. They found that these measurements were perfect for big ships to carry heavy things. Back in Noah's time, people didn't build such big ships. How did Noah, a regular person back then, know how to build such a big ark? Isn't it amazing how the Bible had instructions that were useful even in later times? Scientific evidence number 6. Air. The Bible also knew that air has weight, even before science figured it out. Job 28:25 says that God gave the wind its weight. People used to think air was weightless, but the Bible knew better. Scientific evidence number 7. The water cycle. The Bible knew about the water cycle long before scientists. Ecclesiastes 3. When the clouds are filled with rain, they pour down on the earth. Job 36:27-28. He draws up the drops of water, they distill his mist in rain, which the skies pour down and drop on mankind abundantly. Pierre Perrault, a scientist from the 17th century, was one of those who discovered the water cycle. But long before they made these discoveries, the Bible had already described the water cycle with great accuracy. It's amazing how the Bible knew these things before science did. These are just a few examples of how smart the Bible is. Now we can also find historical evidence that proves the Bible is real, not just from the Bible itself, but from other documents too. Historical evidence number 1. In the Bible, there's a man named Pontius Pilate in John 18:29. People used to think Pilate was only a made-up character in stories. But guess what? In 1961, archaeologists found a stone with his name on it. So Pontius Pilate was a real person, not just a made-up one. Historical evidence number 2. Hezekiah Tunnel. In the Bible, there was a king named Hezekiah. In 2 Chronicles 32:30, it says that Hezekiah stopped the upper outflow of the fountain of Gihon and turned it down to the west side of the city of David. Guess what? In Jerusalem, they found a tunnel that fits the description of Hezekiah's tunnel from the Bible. Historical evidence number 3. King David. People used to wonder if a king named David really existed because there was no proof. But in 1993, a person named Abraham Byron found a stone that mentioned a king of the house of David. This is the wording often used in the Bible. See 1 Kings 12:19. So these discoveries show that the Bible tells real stories about ancient kings and events. The Pool of Siloam. In 2004, they made an awesome discovery, the Pool of Siloam. It's exactly like the one mentioned in the Bible, in John 9:7. Go to the Pool of Siloam, which means translated, send and wash yourself. The Bible mentions many nations, and some people thought they were made up, but guess what? They were real. Like the Hittites. In Joshua 11:3, it talks about them and other nations. In 1906, a person named Hugo Winkler found stones with inscriptions about the Hittites. Historical evidence number 6. The Qumran scroll. Some might say the Bible has mistakes because people copied it for a long time. But in 1947, they found the Dead Sea Scroll, a very old copy of the book Isaiah. When they compared it with newer copies, they were the same. These are real events with real people who lived a long time ago. Unlike some other religions with made-up characters that have never been proven outside their own scriptures, the Bible stories are true and have evidence. There are many more incredible things in the Bible, including prophetic proofs, but we won't discuss them all now. The important thing to remember is that the Bible stories are real. We've been exploring religion using 2 criteria: scientific evidence and historical evidence. Now there's another interesting way called wisdom of the crowd. It's like when lots of people share their ideas and together they often get the right answer. Back in the 19th century, a scientist named Francis Galton wanted to show that crowds are not wise, but he discovered something surprising. The answers of many people, when combined, were often correct on average. There is a fun experiment. A cow is set up in the city, and everyone walking by is asked to guess how much it weighs. People give crazy answers like 50 kilogram, 300 kilogram, or even 700 kilogram. But if you add up all the answers and calculate the average, you get the right weight of the cow. Let's have a look at some statistics. The Bible is the most read book in the world, with up to 3 billion copies sold. And did you know that Christianity has more than 2.5 billion believers? That's a lot of people who believe in it. All these things make us wonder, is there something special about the Bible and Christianity? Maybe the majority has a feeling that it's true. The Bible also says the following in Daniel 12:4. And you, Daniel, keep the word secret and seal the book until the time of the end. Many will search and knowledge will increase. And as you can see, the knowledge is spreading. The first important thing is that we found evidence that the Bible is trustworthy. Only now can we go deeper into this and deal with what the Bible has to say. If you don't do this preparatory work, then we will always ask ourselves at some points. For example, how can a virgin give birth to a child? Since we now know that the Bible is not just a book, but that it must have been led by a higher intelligence, we can also assume that the Creator who created this world is capable of anything. Imagine a virtual world created by a software developer. The people in the virtual world wouldn't know the developer exists unless they see signs or clues left by the creator. In a way, our world would be like a simulation too. Elon Musk himself thinks we may be living in a simulation. Ultimately, a simulation is comparable to a virtual world. A simulation can also only be created, so it needs a creator. Some people cannot understand how certain things could happen. But if we believe that God created our world, then these things are not impossible for Him. It's like the software developer reprogramming the virtual world to do amazing things. If you compare all this with the software developer, you realize that it's not impossible after all. Example, the software developer sees in the virtual world that a group of people is being hunted and whose path is blocked by a sea. The software developer only has to reprogram something briefly so that the physical laws in this virtual world are turned off for a moment. It doesn't seem strange or impossible, right? But for those people in this virtual world, it is a miracle, and they cannot understand it. And anyone in this virtual world who has not seen it will not believe it either. Just like the people in the virtual world cannot fully understand what the developer does, some things in our world might seem unbelievable too. In the second episode and today's episode, we did the groundwork so we can trust the Bible even when it tells us amazing stories that might seem impossible. Conclusion. In this episode, we have highlighted the presence of scientific knowledge within the Bible, knowledge that people back in the old days couldn't have known. This suggests a source of higher intelligence behind the Bible's creation. Additionally, we explored historical and archaeological evidence, which supports the authenticity of the Bible's accounts, affirming the reality of the people and events described within its pages. We should remember one important thing. When we talk about God, we shouldn't make Him small like us or fit Him into our world. We cannot fully understand God or make pictures of Him. That's why we should not make idols and worship things we create with our hands. I have an idea for a film that captures the concept with an engaging story. Your support through crowdfunding would be greatly appreciated due to budget limitations. You can show your support by visiting the link provided below in the description. Thank you. The podcast version of this video will also be available on Spotify and other streaming platforms. If you believe it could be beneficial to others, please feel free to share the links.